Hello, everybody. Hope you're all well this frosty morning. So I've spoken to several of you already. I've recognised some familiar names, so welcome back. And today's topic is to talk about talent management and succession planning. So if we skip on to the next slide, what we're going to cover today is, again, lots of content. I'll have to race through the agenda because I want to give you as much takeaway as you can. The areas we're looking at specifically are talent management, succession planning, exploring those in more detail, how they can complement both your internal resourcing strategies and also your external resourcing strategy. And then actually, how can you put in place a program that is workable, easy to manage, easy to administer, which will run alongside your ongoing development sort of strategy for your resource and people. Looking specifically at development planning and then how this talent management cycle fits. So there's a lot of content there to cover. Hopefully we'll get through all that, and questions can be asked at any point in time. So please do feel like dropping any questions in the chat box if necessary. Okay, so let's move on. So first of all, I'm keen to understand in the group, if you can answer the first Slido, who currently uses any form of talent management or succession planning process? Please be honest. This is really for me to gauge what the current level of knowledge or requirement might be from this session. I can't see any specific answers, so don't worry about what you say. Let's just let that one come through. Okay, so a couple of people still coming through. Okay. So the majority of people, by the look of this, are not using anything currently, which is fine. Some people are, which is great to see. We finished the poll. Still going. Still going. Just give it a few more minutes. Okay, so more people are not using it than are using it, but we do have some who are using some type of process, which is great. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide. So I wanted to try and explain, obviously we all know why it's really important to have a resourcing strategy. We know, largely why it's important to think about your people and what's coming in the future. But I thought a good way of describing it was by sharing with you a few successful beings, people, objects, and I thought who could be relevant to a group of people across a business sort of sector. So the first one I want you to think about is if anybody who is interested in dressage or horses or anything sort of in that field. This is Geo. I don't know if any of you have come across Geo. Geo is a British gelding dressage hero who has won Olympic medals last year, 2021, and also I think silver in the individuals at the European Championships recently this year. So that's that achievement in itself is significant, and we'll discuss that in a moment. Alongside Geo, most of you probably will recognise Eilish McColgan. She was very successful, particularly this year at the Commonwealth Games, winning the 10,000 metres. And then I think she came second, silver medal, 5,000 metres. And she's been a very successful long distance athlete, although her success has really come to the fore this year. So she's another person I wanted to share with you. And the third picture there on the right hand side is the Red Bull Honda F1 winner, Max Verstappen. So again, if you're into Formula One racing, you'll be familiar with the success achieved there. But these three individuals, beings, people, are all at the top of their field. Now, that clearly doesn't happen overnight. There's been a lot of pain, sweat, tears, success, setbacks, training, development, feedback, errors, mistakes. All those sorts of things have happened, for many, many years in these individuals' careers. They've had a lot of people working with them, supporting them, coaching them, giving them, a lot of help and guidance along the way. And my point today is that this success, this huge success, doesn't just happen. And there's a lot of money and a lot of time invested in these three separate individuals and people and so on. So why am I telling you this? It's obvious. You are all business owners, managers, working with people. Now, talents, your people, are a very costly and significant, part of your business. And I ask you this: are you investing the same amount of time, the same amount of money, coaching, feedback, one-to-one dialogue, communication, support, training with your people, which is your talent, which is, a significant cost to your business? And I'm not expecting you to necessarily, be out training in the morning with your employees every single day at 4 a.m, which is what some of these individuals in front of you would be doing. But it's asking yourself the serious question: are you affording your people, your talent, the time to bring out their best that they can be? And that's a valid question. So that was why I wanted to present those individuals to you today. So have a moment to think, your current employees, and if you're employing people across teams, think about the last time you gave them some support, you gave them some feedback, development. And think about, if they failed, how you treated that failure. Were you encouraging? Did you try and understand why that failure happened? Because we're all human and we all do make mistakes, but it's trying to bring out the best of your people. So with that in mind, I want to move on to the next slide, if possible, please. I want to ask you a question about what you think the cost of a poor hire at a first line manager level would be. So if you recruit somebody at first line manager and they then don't work for whatever reason, what do you think that cost is to your business? So please hazard a guess as to what it might cost you. So don't mind doing the Slido. Let's see what you all think. Okay. A few more minutes or seconds. Okay. So 50, or there's a few more people still doing. I'll give you 10 more seconds to complete the Slido. All right, so looking at the results, 50% of you believe it would cost about 50,000 to make the difference of a poor hire. 29% of you think it'll be 75,000. 13% of you think it's over 100,000, and 8% think it's 25,000. So let me tell you the answer. If you go to the next slide, please. We're actually talking, and I will be honest, these figures are slightly old now, so it probably has changed again and gone up. When this survey was done several years ago, we're talking about £132,000 for making a mistake or hiring somebody who doesn't work at first line manager level, which in my view is significant money we're talking about. Now let's look at how that's broken down. We're talking about obviously salary that you're going to pay them for the short time that they're there. Training time that you've invested to get them up to speed with any relevant systems or workplace practices. Recruitment costs are significant. I'm sure that's probably light. I know there's a few recruitment people in the room. You probably say that might be more. Training as well as part of that. I don't think you can really articulate the amount of training depending on the industry. So productivity of that employee. So if they've joined and they're not skilled enough, or they're not feeling comfortable in the culture, or they're not getting enough management support, whatever the reason is, they're not feeling great and they're probably not performing to their best, which then has a knock-on effect to their team. They're a manager, they're managing a group of people. If you're not getting the best out of your manager, what are they then in turn putting on their team? So you're going to lose effectiveness from your actual team that works for them. You may also have some people leave, which as a consequence of their poor leadership, dissatisfaction, whatever it might be. So that adds on as well. So we're talking about a significant cost. And it's a cost that at the moment, we all know the shortages in skills. If you're really struggling to find somebody, and I'm hearing this a lot, oh, it was the best of a bad bunch, I had to go with them because there's nobody else, which is a very valid concern right now. But if you make the wrong selection decision, and then you invest in training, you invest in getting that person up to speed, it doesn't just impact that individual. It obviously impacts the company, but it also impacts other people who may in turn leave. So you really have to take the time to get your recruitment right. We're not going to go into recruitment today. That's for the next workshop in January. But it is important to look at your resourcing strategy and how you fill any gaps that you have, because what I'm saying to you now is that the cost of recruitment, of a poor recruitment, can be significant. So without being all too doom and gloom, let's move on. So why else might you need to think about investing or considering a talent management strategy? And I'm sure you know all of this, but I'm going to just quickly take you through this. So obviously engagement, it's a buzzword, we've all heard about it. Engagement, the more people are engaged, and I think Toby said earlier that the stat was from the charter was that 94% of people will stay with an organization if you invest in them. And invest can be having regular one-to-ones, it can be development, it can be training, it can be a bit of job shadowing, a bit of a promotion, all sorts of ways you can look after and invest in your people. And that has a knock-on effect to engagement. So the more you are treating your employees like a Formula One car, like a racehorse, like a top athlete, the more they will feel special, loved by you as a business, feel cared for, valued, and the more they will want to stay and work within your business. So there's a lot to say for putting time and effort in engagement. Obviously, we've just talked about the costs around training and how that can be quite significant. So it's important to try to ensure that the people that you're investing in, you are keeping motivated, you're asking for feedback, you're doing surveys, you're having that regular one-to-one dialogue, so that you know that your investment is happy and is going to stick around. The biggest problem at the moment, I'm sure you all know many sectors that are struggling, is that there is a massive skills gap across most industries. I mean, I heard a statistic just yesterday that, well, I was at a training course with somebody I was just speaking to, and they were saying that the NHS, there's about 133,000 vacancies, which is absolutely staggering. I was shocked to hear that. 133,000 vacancies in the NHS. How do you even begin to try and resource that? not to mention other industries. So, you know, you go out for a restaurant, have a meal, chefs wanted, you know, there's such a shortage in hospitality across many sectors. Places are closing. You go to a coffee shop, you go to Costa down the road, and it's shut because there's no staff. It's like, what has society come to? It is really, really quite desperate at the moment. So if you can do something to address those skills internally, to develop people so that you don't have those gaps, surely that would make sense. You've also got career opportunities changing. So I'm working with quite a few young people at the moment, and they're looking at their careers, but they're not looking at a career. They're looking at multiple careers, because for them it might be, well, I'll do this for sort of 5-10 years and then I'll revalue where I'm at, maybe move across to this sector. So people are not just looking for a job for life, as I did when I was young. So you've got to harness what individuals are looking for in the future. It isn't just one career, it's multiple careers. And by allowing your people to develop some different skills in different areas, you're again tapping into what makes them happy, and you're going to retain those individuals. So you need to think much further into the future and much more varied about different types of careers. Values are a fact that I talk about frequently when I talk to people. Whatever you do, values have to remain at the very heart of that decision. So if you are recruiting people into your business, you need to question yourself, well, what are the values of your business? And it would make complete sense to try and bring in place people that are akin to your values, as opposed to somebody who has very conflicting values, because there probably isn't going to be a match and it probably won't work. So you need to think about your talent and what their values are, what your values are. Are they aligned? And if not, how can you address that? So recruit with values in mind is my advice always. And then you've also got people who you can utilize within your business to develop them as a mentor for other people. So you don't have to just necessarily go external for your training or your development. You may use some of your skilled people and skill them up further as a mentor or a coach to then enhance other people's careers. So there's lots of reasons here why investing in this time, investing in these people will really result in engagement. It will result in multiple career choices. It will result in cross-skilling and progression for many people in many different ways that perhaps you wouldn't have originally thought of when you recruited them as that team leader or as that engineer back in the day. So lots to think about, lots of reasons why looking at talent is really important. Okay, let's move on. So what is talent management? Talent management is about, as it says on the tin, looking at your talents, your resource, your people, but it goes a bit further than that. It's looking at a strategy to think about what is coming in the future, what organization needs, resource needs the business might have, not just now, not just next year, 5 years, 10 years. It's thinking about where the business is going, and then thinking about, well, how can you best utilize your people to help the business achieve that direction. It's also a process that helps identify people that might not be ready yet to take on some of their skills. It's a process to help manage people that could be ready, to help manage people that are ready, and to help people develop and improve some of these scarce skills for the future, and critical roles that you as a business know you're going to be having in time. It really is a focus on employees, particularly with certain skills and high level skills, or people that are recognized as being particularly expert in the field, people who are really good at certain things, and helping people develop and appreciate and realize their best. Because even if you've got think of the people in your current teams, a really good employee. Are they the best they can be? Are they fully utilized to what you could really get from them? Are they happy? You think they're happy? Maybe you could diversify some of their skill, train them in another way, and that will make them even more happy, and it will utilize skills that your business needs, that your business might be short in. So it's about looking at not just the people, but also the skills and the positions required that your business might be struggling with. How can you match up some of those opportunities? It's not just about top end, it's also about the bottom end. So you may have some people that may be underutilized, that might be twiddling their thumbs. They might have had a lot of work to do in the past, but things have dried up. They might be getting a bit bored, but they're a good person and you want to keep them. So how can you realign individuals that maybe are not really using their skills, and go back to the engagement piece? If they're sat there bored, okay, it's all great to be not stressed and not too challenged, every now and then, but over a longer period, if you've got individuals that are not happy, not using their skill, thinking, why am I coming to work every day just to sit and play cards or whatever it is that they're doing, they're going to eventually get fed up of that and they're going to leave. Now, they're really good talent that unfortunately has no longer got a lot of activity to do, and that's a real shame that you could potentially lose somebody purely because they're underutilized. So it's important to look at both top ends and also the bottom end of your resource. If we move on to the next slide. So talent management looks at talent, resource, people, and succession planning is looking at the actual organizational requirements. So this is more about your strategy. Where are you heading as a business? What markets are you hoping to enter into? Maybe you're going to diversify your product offering. What is it you're looking to achieve in the next 5-10 years as a business? So you need to start there and then work back from that. Equally, think about what other things are going to be influential on those business aims. It might be that think of where we've just come from. We've been through a that would need to factor into a succession plan. What other external factors might influence some of your future resource requirements? And it might be legislation, it might be some changes to legislation, it might be some environmental factors are coming in. Look at in Bristol at the moment, we've got the clean air zone. A couple of years ago, you might have factored that into your succession planning and your resource planning. You might decide to stay out of the city centre. And what does that mean for your business? So think about all the impacts that you're potentially going to be facing moving forwards. Obviously, the cost of living is something which everybody's dealing with at the moment. These are the sorts of things that you should be considering when you're looking to design your business model, and then ultimately who is going to fit into your resource strategy within your business model. Also, a key part of succession planning is looking at critical roles that are significant to the success or the failure of your business. So you might have a business that has, I don't know, a certain skill that is hard to find. That, in my mind, would be a critical role. So if you had somebody doing that particular skill and they decided to leave, they were hard to replace, you need to do some serious succession planning around that position. If you've got a position that maybe you've got somebody in there that's been in there for 30, 40 years, okay, maybe the skill isn't critical, but the level of knowledge that individual has is critical. So have you done anything about knowledge transfer? Have you considered about when they're going to be leaving, if they're close to retirement, how you're going to capture all of that content before that individual leaves. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done about critical roles. You might have a role that's it readily brings somebody in and they then move on to another position, again, that will be deemed to be a critical role. So have a think about what are the critical roles in your business. And then what you should be doing from that is determining where you're going to find the resource for that critical role. And this is when we look at potentially recruitment, and it may be internal, it may be external, but there's got to be lots of ways around looking at how you plan for a successor following that person departing. Okay, if we move on to the next slide. So resourcing strategy. I did say, I think I did have a slide originally that I took out, and it was about which is the best way to recruit, internally or externally, and there is no right answer for that. And I'm a big believer of both the right answer, because there's merit for both, and it depends on your business, it depends on your size, it depends on the nature of what you're doing, so many factors. But what I'm saying here is you should be looking at both internal and external recruitment. Obviously, the benefits of recruiting internally, you can see the words on the slide. It's usually cheaper, it's usually much faster. You can find people really quickly because you already have visibility. They don't have to do any notice periods to leave, and there is no time to recruit. So it's quite good for that process. Improving morale, obviously, if you're giving people opportunities to move around internally, they see those lateral moves, promotions happening, and it does increase morale, as long as you do it the right way and you don't employ somebody that people feel that the process hasn't been fair or anything like that. You're able to not try before you buy, but you have information on these individuals because you've probably got performance appraisal data, information about who they are, their strengths, their weaknesses, where they've worked before, what they've done well, projects that have been successful. So you are able to match some of those skills more carefully than you would somebody externally. It's nice to reward the loyalty. It's nice to keep people inside. And you can also easily understand whether they're going to fit your culture because they're working probably in that culture, depending on how big your business is. You can usually match quite quickly with culture because they already know the way that the place runs, how you get to work, your environment usually matches much more quickly. Externally recruiting goes without saying. We're looking to bring in new ideas. You've got a fresh pair of eyes, somebody who's worked in maybe different sectors, different businesses, different countries. Great innovation can happen because of that fresh set of eyes. They might also bring in different skills that haven't been used before within your business. So it's again a good idea to consider external skills. It increases your network. So if you're only working with the same people you have done for the last couple of years, bringing in the fresh pair of eyes, they've got a whole host of suppliers, connections that you can tap into, maybe you can use to get business development from. So there's a lot of strength in bringing somebody externally in for the network that they have. They obviously have external experience, which may be very relevant, particularly if you're looking to diversify your products or, try something new. They may have already done that before at a previous workplace. And of course, diversity is fabulous. The more diverse your workforce, the more success. I think in my next workshop, I talk about diversity, and there are so many stats on increased productivity, profitability because of a diverse workforce. So it really does enhance your business and your offering. You can reach to different parts of society with diversity. So an external strategy is just as important as an internal strategy. So I wanted for you to think about that. I know some people say it doesn't matter at the moment, we can't recruit externally anyway because there's nobody out there, but it is important to think about your resourcing strategy all the time. And one of the things I say to people is, irrespective of your size, on your business agenda, whether you have monthly meetings or quarterly senior management meetings, you should be talking about your resourcing strategy as every time on the agenda. What's happening with our critical positions? What's happening with the resource? Where are the likely holes? What are the business pressures that we're facing in the future? What are the skills currently we're looking for? Who can we approach outside? You should be having regular contact with both internal and external people discussing your resourcing strategy, because when you do need to fill a hole, whether it be internally or externally, it's usually too late. You need to have had that dialogue long before you get to a point where you're desperate, because I see so many people getting to the point where they need the resource desperately, and that's when they just choose, oh, best of a bad bunch. And that's when you get the plus 100K, cost of making that bad hire. So it's so important to think of your resourcing strategy all the time with everything you're doing, and have it regularly as an agenda piece that you should be discussing and trying to address. Okay, so let's move on. So how do you do it? How do you implement any type of talent management program? The first thing is to think about your organizational needs. What are you doing? Why are you in business? What's your purpose? And then think about where you want to head with your business. Think about the future implications, the future pressures that you're going to be facing, any external factors that might be impacting your company, all that sort of thing, which we've already talked about. You need to start to think about and create a plan. You probably have a business plan which would feature most of this content anyway. Then you simply need to come up with, if you've got job descriptions or organizational charts, highlighting where are the gaps, where are the critical roles, where are the keys to success. If that person was wiped out tomorrow, God forbid, what would you do? Have you got knowledge retention? Have you got people who could pick up those pieces quickly? I'm seeing a lot of clients at the moment dealing with absence, short absence, long-term absence, largely because of mental health. So we're not just saying people might be leaving organizations. People may not be able to complete their jobs. Therefore, they are now on long-term absent, and you have a gaping hole. So these are the sorts of positions that you're needing to be understanding, highlighting on your organizational charts. What am I going to do if that person doesn't return after, they've been off for 2 weeks now? It's not looking good. We're doing everything we can, wellness programs, EAPs, etc. But what am I going to do? So think about those positions as well. Now, this is, again, going back to the values conversation. This is where you need to think about, okay, what's important as a business? What do we hold as a top value, or a set of values that we want these people to be doing? And I've just put a few there as examples. So potentially integrity might be a value that you hold as a business, transparency, customer focus, teamwork, etc. So that when you're going to try to create any type of talent management plan, you want to try to find people with those values, because that's what's really important to you as a business. So you should be using that set of values or competencies, or whatever you want to call it, to try to find people with a similar set of values, so that it's probably going to be a more seamless transition. And then you need to think about, how are you going to assess people? So we've got a list of all the critical roles. Let's say you've got your organizational chart. You've got, 4 critical roles on your organizational chart that you recognize as being real important to the business and the success of the future of the business. How are you then going to assess who can achieve those positions, who can succeed into those positions? You need to have some type of criteria, and we'll cover that shortly. And then how are you going to measure when people are ready? Who's ready now? How are we going to give timescales to develop? So you need to think about that as part of your plan. And you've got to be realistic. If you sit down and look at your job descriptions and your organizational charts, and you think, okay, I've got 30 positions here, they're all critical, I'm going to write them all down. you're never going to do that, in all honesty. Good luck with that, but I don't believe you're going to sit down and do succession plans for 30 positions. You've got to start with the key positions, the real critical, really, I'm talking real critical here. Start with the top. If that person walks out tomorrow, our business is going to fold. We are in big trouble. Think about the really important ones first. You can come to the other positions later, but start with those real critical positions. Where can I not find anybody to do that job, and why? And how can I change that job? How can I make it more attractive? How can we maybe split the job to two parts for two people? I don't know what it is, but think about what you can do to make that an attractive offering to a potential employee, internal person. Okay, if we just move on to the next slide. So we're looking now at the process. Now, how does this fit in with the rest of your people processes at the moment? I think most people are probably doing some type of performance evaluation, whether it be a monthly one-to-one or a 6-monthly appraisal or whatever. This is where it should fit. So your talent management process should fit in to your other assessment of individuals. So if you're doing regular one-to-ones, and we've talked about that previously at some of the other workshops, if you were able to come to those, a one-to-one is, in my words, where the magic happens. A one-to-one is crucial for every business, and that is where you're talking about the job, importantly the job, what's happening, how well somebody's doing, where they might need to improve, giving them feedback about the job. Go back to my analogy of the athlete and the Formula One car. You need to have regular dialogue with your people in order for them to understand where they could perhaps improve to. Give them feedback, give them the tools to then try and develop even further. And this is where your talent management piece begins. You start by giving feedback, talking about how somebody's doing on the job. You start to talk about where they might want to progress with their particular skill sets. You might talk about, have they considered diversifying into another part of the business? You start to have these conversations to see if somebody really isn't interested, or if they are indeed thinking about wanting to change their skill set. This is when you find maybe someone's not actually happy, and you can start to do something about it before they then leave and it's too late. So the one-to-one process begins, is the most important process, and begins with those discussions, the monitor, the evaluation. You start to talk about the future development. And from a business perspective, you can see the bottom angle of the succession planning here. You're going to come to the one-to-one knowing your future business needs, your service needs, the fact that you need somebody to diversify because you really can't fill this gap. You know your key positions. You know it's really hard to fill these roles. I need to talk to my internal talent about maybe diversifying into some of these areas. And then you start to look at that together, bringing both the individual's perspective, but also the organizational perspective. And hopefully somewhere in the middle there, you've got some kind of harmony whereby that individual might consider a different set of skills. You might be able to sort of harness their fact that they're a good egg. They want to come to work. They're really motivated, and you might shape them more so into a different part of your business. So this is where it all comes together. Okay, if we just move on to the next slide, please. So how you look at and select talent. As I've said already, the performance management time is a good time and place to do this. So when you're having your appraisal meetings, you're talking about current role to your employees, and you're talking about their career aspirations, and you're hoping that you can try and align them to fit the organizational needs. Now, I always say that you should be looking not just for talent that is ready now. So you might have a conversation with an individual who, might be looking to diversify and move across laterally or move to a leadership role or something else. But you should also be looking at talent that isn't ready. Okay, so you should be thinking about, if I gave some development to an individual who isn't ready yet to become a team leader, but if I gave them the relevant training, job coaching, project opportunities, maybe they will be ready in 1 to 2 years. And equally, maybe they might be ready in 3 to 5 years. So you should be looking at your talent that is ready now, ready with development in 1 to 2 years, and ready with significant development in 3 to 5 years. And you should be harnessing the talent that far in advance. So identify who your talent is, where they might be ready now. So you might have an individual that, let's say they're fairly new to the business, they're a developing engineer, let's say they're an engineer for argument's sake, and you're looking at a critical role of, I don't know, a product engineering leader. Maybe that's the critical role that you've got a real sticking point with. You can't keep somebody in that position. It's really critical to a key client of yours. So you've identified that as a really key role, and you want to do some succession planning for that product engineering leader position. So what you'd be doing is you'd be looking at, okay, who has the skill? If Mr. Product Engineering Leader left today, who has the skill to at least hold the reins tomorrow? Who could do that? And you identify a number of individuals that will be ready now. You'd also look at, okay, with the relevant coaching and development, job shadowing, nurturing, etc., who would be ready to do the product engineering leader role in 1 to 2 years, and who will be ready in 3 to 5 years. And you begin to build your succession plan. So we go back to our critical positions. I said earlier, we've got 4. You then, underneath each of those positions, identify ready now, 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years. And then you start to develop them accordingly with their development plan as part of the appraisal and regular one-to-ones. So it sounds simple. It really is simple. It's as simple as that. I often talk to people about, do you tell people that they're being groomed, if you like, or that they're talents, or that they're, high potential? It is really dependent on your culture. Some people like to tell people because it's like, ooh, inflate their ego. You're my top talent. You're being developed for that role. You're being developed for the product engineering manager role. Woohoo. Some people love that, which is great. What about those that haven't been told that they're not being developed and they're not ready now, or they're not going to be on any talent succession plan? That can have a negative impact. So you have to be careful about how you monitor that. I worked in an organization where I managed the whole talent across the program in a big company. And we had a complete exercise where we had pools and pools of talents, and we had to develop the talent and communicate to the talent about how special they were and how wonderful they were. And it was lovely. But it did also, for some people, annoy them because they weren't on this pedestal. They weren't being developed and treated in a nice way. But equally, that gave some people that wanted to be talent or recognized as talent, that gave them the push to say, right, well, I'm going to get on that succession plan. I want to be ready now. I want to be considered for that particular position. So it does work both ways, but you do have to be mindful about how you communicate those talent ratings. Developing talent, I've just listed here a few ideas about what you can do. Obviously, everybody should have a development plan, and that should be done at performance management, performance appraisal, some type of performance review. Everybody should have a mentor. Again, think about my analogy, my Formula One car, my athletes, my dressage horse. You should have a mentor allocated to some, to people that really want to develop, to help them progress. It doesn't have to be an internal mentor. You can find somebody external. I'm currently mentoring somebody in Switzerland, purely online, to help them progress to the next level. There are mentors all around the world, people people who are great at encouraging you, questioning you, thinking about what might be next. Think about how you're giving your people some of this investment, this time. What are you doing for them? Job shadowing, great way to help people progress, help people see what it is that you want them to do in the future. There's all sorts of ways you can develop your talent. And fundamentally, why are you doing it? You're doing it for your business advantage. You are doing it for them, obviously, but you're doing it with your business strategy in mind. You're thinking about where your gaps are, what the future external pressures are, and you're developing your talents because you like them, but because you want it to do it for your business. So there is a win-win here. And often people say to me, oh, should I just be developing my managers? This process can be done right through the business, and it should be done right through the business. It doesn't matter what level you are, how important or not important you are. You should be giving time, effort, resource, succession planning opportunities for all of your business if they are, you know, the right people coming to work wanting to progress and do the best job they can. You should be developing them. Okay, moving on. I'm going specific now, so apologies if this is too much detail, but this is one type of where you can assess talents. Works quite nicely. I actually worked in a business, in a company once, where we color coordinated talent ratings. So we gave, this is true, we gave people, so high potential, as you can see here, who I would identify as somebody who is ready now, to move up 2 levels above their current level. And then, again, this does depend on your hierarchical structure in your industry, but I'm saying they're not just ready for the same level, they're ready to progress. You've got a really good egg here with the right development, boof, they could really do something great for your business. And they display high performance. So when you're looking at talent, you should be looking at potential. Do they have potential to progress? But you should also be looking at factual data, and are they a good performer? Because they might have high potential to progress, but they might be rubbish at their job, not quite working. You need to have somebody performing well. So you need some objective data there. And going back to my color coordination, our high potentials in a previous company, they were all rated gold, you know, like gold star, amazing. Then you get down to the other levels, and I kid you not, the lowest level, which on my screen here, somebody who is ready for realignment, i.e. moving, they might be a low performer in their current role, but they haven't had the opportunity to move. They might need to be moved somewhere else. In a company I worked for, they were actually rated brown, which we can't do this. This is terrible. We've got our high potentials rated as gold, and we've got our realignment rated as brown. This is just not the right message we want to give. So my message here to you is you can call them a certain name, high potential, ready for realignment. You can give them colors, gold, bronze, silver, brown, probably not. It's totally up to you how you use the rating of talent. But you need to identify different levels, and that's my point here. So you do have to identify who is ready for the future. You've got the category here that I've referred to as developing potential. So they might be ready to move, but maybe not so high through the organizational chart. It might be more about moving within one level, but they also display performance. Then you've got somebody who is coming in, doing their job, solid performer. These are people you need in your business. They're not bad people. They're good people. They're solid. They're a high performer, but they're not ready to progress. And I don't want to lose sight of this population, because if you think about a bell-shaped curve, this is where the majority of your employees will fall. Solid performer. You want solid performers, and it's not a bad thing, because if I go back to my previous comment where I talked about, do you communicate your talent ratings to people? When we've done this previously and we've told majority of the people solid performer is where you are, they'll go, well, that's not fair. Why am I not high potential? But not everybody can be high potential. You've only got sort of the top end that really do want to drive across 2 levels of the organization. Most people will fall in the solid performer category, which is a good thing. Then you've got ready for alignment. They typically might be square peg round hole people. So you might have low performance at the moment. That's not to say they couldn't be a top performer. They might not be in the right job. They might be new to role. And I think I saw a comment pop up. You might want to have another category which talks about needing to move out of the organization or move out of that position. So you would potentially have a 5th category of ready to move, or, whatever you call it, you knowing that you would need to take action to move that person some way, because it's not working currently in their current position, whether their current position is coming to an end, whether their skill set doesn't match, but you need to take some type of action. So you would have another. Now, I think I just saw a comment, so I'm trying to present and speak. I think I saw a comment come in. What happens if you have high potentials who you have no opportunities for? Absolutely, it happens, and it certainly happens in flatter structures. So you need to think about how else can you develop them. What other opportunities are there? Are there projects that you might have that need addressing, that you could really utilize some of those skills, their values that they've got, that hopefully aligned to your values? So it might be that you've got, I don't know, cost of living problems at the moment. Okay, go and work on a project on how we can maximize business expenditure, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what the project is, but you come up with creative ways to recognize their potential. And you're telling them that their potential, you're telling them that you really want to harness their experience. You might think about the future of the organization, and you need to do some work on, I don't know, climate change. You then task this individual, okay, how do you fancy, driving a strategy around climate change for our business, or becoming, something that hasn't actually happened yet? So moving digitalization, I don't know what it is, but you come up with different projects that would keep this person happy and know that they're motivated to take on something new that is going to enhance the business. That's how I would address high potentials who you have no scope for progression. You might have aspects of your job as the MD that you might be prepared to share with them, to give to them, to take away some of your stress. That is a high level position than what they're currently doing. It depends on your business, it really does. Okay, so I now have a question for you, because I've spoken far too long. If we just move on to the next slide, please. So here we go. I have a Slido for you. There is a new opportunity for a team leader, an engineering team leader position. Sorry, my background is engineering, hence why I've referenced that a few times today. So who would you consider? Okay, and this is quite how long is a piece of string, but if you've got a position, engineering team leader, who would you consider? Would you consider your top performing engineer, or would you consider your latest new team leader recruited externally 1 year ago, who has been effective? Would you consider your middle manager, who is one level up, who isn't performing? Or would you go externally? I know there's a lot of information that you probably need to answer that question, but just hazard a guess and tell me what you think you'd probably do. Okay, so there's a few comments coming in, so good to see. Give you a few more minutes to take a guess. Okay. Okay, last few seconds before we move on. Okay. Think whether that. So I love this sort of thing. Obviously, there is lots of information. I'm sure you're all saying, oh, we need to know so much more before we can decide. And that is true. But I wanted to just talk through some of the points around each of these. So at the moment, 59% of you are going to consider the top performing engineer in the team. We've got 18% looking to take on the latest team leader that was recruited a year ago who has been effective. We've got 18% who would be looking externally. And we've got 6% who are considering the middle manager one level up who isn't performing. So Obviously, there is no right answer here. It depends on so many factors. But I wanted to just talk about a few things. So let's talk about the top performing engineer in the team. Great option, which 59% of you have chosen. Obviously, there is a difference between a top performing engineer or an engineer and a team leader. So just because they're a great engineer doesn't automatically make them a great team leader. They are a different skill set. Clearly, you would need to have knowledge of being a good engineer to run a team of engineers. But it doesn't always work that way. I do see a lot of people who are promoted from being a particular skill set, really good at their skill set, and are then promoted to a leader position and fail miserably because they're not leaders, or they're not given the skills to become a good leader. So that's a point just to note, that just because they're good at engineering doesn't make them a good team leader. They had a very different skill set, very different skill set. So you would need to make sure that if you did appoint the top engineer, you have also developed them with the relevant leadership skills, listening, communication, etc., to be able to lead the team. You've got the latest team leader who was recruited a year ago, has been effective, could be a good option. It might be a good option because they have come in externally, they're leading a team, they're being effective, so they're probably going to go on to the engineering team leader position and also be effective. You need to think about the impact on other people. Are you overlooking somebody lower down that might be a bit annoyed that this new team leader's come in and then they've been moved across here? You need to think about that. Obviously, it'll create a gap in the business anyway as a team leader, so you're still going to need to fill a team leader role anyway. But this is where your succession plan will come into play, because you'd understand who's available, who's being developed to become a certain team leader, and who's ready now, who would really enjoy that particular post. Recruiting externally is a good thing. Again, we've talked earlier about the benefits of recruiting externally. So all I'd say on that point is, if you are recruiting externally, make sure you consider your internal recruits as well, because you can annoy people if you are overlooking them and you recruited a team leader externally a year ago and you're now recruiting somebody externally again for a team leader position. So just think about the impact on your internals. You may not have anybody internal. Your succession plan may tell you that. Middle manager, one level up, isn't performing. I love this one because this is where you can really utilize and realign people in the business. So I would go more down this path. It depends on why the middle manager isn't performing. Are they in a job where they're set up to fail? Are they looking to sort of wind down and retire out of the business? All sorts of reasons. But you've got a middle manager level isn't performing at that job. Maybe they're beyond their depth, but a lower level position will be something they would entertain. I've seen a lot of companies move people up and down, and it has worked really well. They've been promoted because they've been good at what they've done. They've gone up too high and just totally out of their depth. Drop them down a level, and you've got a really top manager here who could be really beneficial for your business. So it does depend on lots of factors. I do agree, but it is a good avenue to explore. And this is where you're looking at your regular discussions about your resource and how you can utilize your good resource, your potentials, for some of these critical roles moving forwards. Okay, let's move on. Getting there. So that brings me to this point, that talent pools and discussions that you're having are not just talking about the top talent. You're talking about those that are clearly top talent, high potential, high performing, but you're also talking about people that may have been in their role for a long time that might be better off moving laterally. And you're talking about the last category that I just talked about, with that manager, middle manager, who's above his depth, out of his depth, and needs to be brought back to get the best out of him. Obviously, there's contractual issues around moving someone down and dropping salary and so on. But I've seen organizations red ring salaries and move people down, keep them at the salary, and know that they're a highly paid team leader, but you're getting a lot out of them and they're much happier because they're not in that stressful middle management job. So there's all sorts of discussions that can happen and all types of movement that should be considered, not just your top potential. And somebody said earlier, movement out of the organization is also part of these discussions. You have somebody who just doesn't fit, whether it be the values, whether it be the culture, you need to talk about how you're going to move them. And those are the discussions you should be having regularly. Just moving on now to my next Slido. Here's another good one. Let's have a quick look. So we have Mary, who was a good, solid performer, but over the last 6 months, she's been performing below standard. Do you do nothing, leave it, it will probably resolve itself, manage her out, move her to another role, I don't know if I said, sorry, discussing the appraisal, and or pay her off. So it's what are your options? It's again dependent on so many factors. So I've not given you a lot of detail, so I do apologize, but what would you do? Okay. Okay, I think we're almost there. So most people here are looking to just cut in the appraisal and see get more information, see what's happening, which is absolutely a great option to use. So whether it be a one-to-one meeting, whether it be an appraisal, any discussion you can have, that will be a great option. Moving her to another role, this is often one where you're just moving the problem, but then it can resolve itself depending on the reason why she's not been performing. It might be because she's got a personality clash with her particular manager, so moving her to another role might resolve that. But usually moving them to another role moves the problem, and the problem results and raises its head in another 3 months' time. So you have to understand why you would hope that the other role would do anything different for that individual. Do nothing. Nobody's selected do nothing, which is great, because my experience is when you do nothing, it's like a stone that gathers moss. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and suddenly you've got this massive big boulder that you've now got to deal with, that someone finally has to deal with, because it won't resolve itself. Having a problem never usually resolves itself. So doing nothing is definitely not the way to go. Manage her out may be the way to go. Again, it depends on what the situation is, but to manage somebody out who isn't performing, through a capability process, you are talking about at least 3 months, because you need to take them to the first stage, give them feedback, set expectations, review in a month. If she's still not performing, take it to the next stage, set a date, review in a month. It's going to take a good 3 months to manage her out. Hopefully you can discuss in the appraisal, discuss why the low performance is happening, and work out a way of making the performance improve, or understand what aspects are making her not meet her targets, and see if you can address those. Paying her off is never the way forward, in my view. I'm sure if there's any solicitors in the room today, they possibly will disagree. But my business is about helping companies work together with individuals to get a win-win and not have to pay somebody off. So please don't pay anybody off. There's always a solution. There's always a way forward. It's just trying to work out what that solution is. But thankfully, nobody chose paying her off today, which is great. Okay, so let's move on. I'm looking now just quickly to before we close, just to finish up on a few points on how you develop people. We have talked a lot about this throughout this workshop, so hopefully this is fairly straightforward for you. But as we've said, and as Toby said earlier, people do stay with companies that invest in the development, and the stat that Toby gave us was 94% stay, which is massive. By going back to giving them time, giving them development, giving them some feedback, helping them progress to the next level, to a lateral level. It helps people stay invested in that company, and that is key. So if you do anything today, focus on your people as a significant resource and make sure you're developing them. Most people don't know what they're doing wrong unless somebody showcases and tells them, actually, you could also be doing this. You could be even better by doing this. So you do have to give feedback. You do. It's important. And it gives people a reason to try to become better. And, you know, and you might want to throw in a bit of reward and a bit of a few carrots, you know, a bit of bonus scheme, whatever it might be, to help them progress. But hopefully people will want to continue to progress. And particularly if you're talking about telling them that they're talented or that they're recognized as talent in the business, that might give them a bit more sort of, oh yeah, I'm top talent, I'm a high potential. Yeah, I could become a shareholder, or I could become a partner or something. That will help them want to become even better, and that's going to benefit your business. So when you're looking at development, if we just move to the next slide, please, you're looking at development for the current position. You only want to look at a few areas, what might need to change, what it is that you're looking to have them do in addition, what might be required for the future, and then talk specifically about who can help them get there. Maybe you have a coach, a mentor, a role model, and you have a few key, you know, probably 3 objectives under their development plan about their current position. If they're absolutely amazing and they really have no development, then that's fine. Think about the next slide, which if we just move to, which is the future positions, you then start to explore that in more detail. Okay, so you're currently an amazing engineering leader. Your next step could be A, B, and C. You know, what do you think you're the best at? Where could we take you within this business? Have you got any ideas about how you see the business growing, where you could add some value? What are your career goals? How do you think they fit in line with the business goals? And who could help you with this progression? And what sort of training do you want? Let's put some timescales in place. Okay, we're going to discuss again this time next year and see where you've progressed, see how you've got on with your coaching sessions, the training course that you're going to go on. And let's look at the strategic objectives that this business is focused on, and we can align you to perhaps take on number 2 and number 3. And then we're going to come back and review. And that's the sort of discussion you're having for a future position. Very transparent. The individuals know that they're recognized to be a very good employee. They feel loved, they feel cared for, and they feel like they're actually going to, you know, be a significant part of the business. And also be rewarded for that as well. So that's where I'd focus on with individuals who have already sort of met the expectations for their current role. Look forward and really use them to drive your business objectives forward. Going back to your succession plan and the reason why you're doing this, you're doing it because you have skills shortage, you're doing it because you have positions that are hard to fill, hard to retain. So you're now using this talent to help with some of those gaps. So almost at the end, my last slide is just to talk about how this all fits in with the entire people process that you have within your business. So it should all fit in. You should start with, you've got a workforce plan, I would assume, where you're looking at the positions that you're looking for the future. You've got a recruitment strategy potentially and how you onboard them. Performance management is the absolute key, not just because you want to give people feedback, but this is where you're talking about your workforce planning. What's important, what's being achieved, what's not being achieved. And then you're tapping into this talent pool to help you work out, okay, so what else do we need to achieve and who can we use? It all fits in together. It's so important. Every aspect of this wheel is so important. Your succession plans should be reviewed, like I said, regularly, whether it be quarterly or yearly. I would be going back to them regularly, looking at them, what you can do with those plans. You may have to consider some type of reward scheme to attract and develop your talent, but it's got to fall back to what are your critical skills? What are the gaps within the business? What are the future threats to the organization? And that should all fit together with your resource plan. all sounds amazing. I know it's not that simple, but it actually is a simple process. It's just about putting some names on paper, making sure you understand where your business is going and trying to fill those gaps. And hopefully that will help you improve your resourcing approach. And whether it be internal or external resourcing, you've now got a more structured way to fill some of those gaps.